2007, Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone. It did not have a physical keyboard, just one home button. The screen stretched across the phone, what we see in the phones of today. But in that time and era, this was the next big thing, one that changed the world of smartphones forever. Most of you have the same touch screen till date, the one Steve Jobs mainstreamed the iPhone 15 years ago. But the Apple of today is not the same Apple. Today, Apple has yet another launch event. It will unveil the iPhone 14. It's likely to include updates to the camera, storage and design. If reports are to be believed, the phone will also have satellite network connectivity. What is that? It will allow users to send emergency text messages, especially in situations where they are without a network. All of this sounds nice, but there is something and nothing extraordinary about the new phone. When the iPhone was unveiled, it changed the market. Since then, the iPhone has gone from one strength to the other. But of late, Apple has been depending too much on the glories of the past. Now, let me clarify. Apple is not a company in crisis. In fact, it is one of the richest companies in the world. The tech giant is the first company to hit a market capitalization of $3 trillion. In fact, its market value surpasses the GDP of some top economies, including that of France, Italy, Canada, and South Korea. In July, the company reported its third quarter earnings. Apple reported a revenue of $83 billion compared to $81.4 billion a year ago. That is an increase of 2%. So the numbers were higher than the expectations of analysts. Their revenue edged up, but here's the catch. Their profit slipped. It declined by 10%. But the problem with Apple is not just the numbers, it is the lack of something new. Apple relies on customers upgrading their phones frequently. But what if people start waiting longer and longer to upgrade their phones? That could be a major problem for Apple. People like to repair and not replace. But Apple depends on them replacing their phones. In fact, the company has been called out for slowing down older phones as well. But despite that, what keeps Apple going is its brand value. Buying an Apple product has aspirational value. If you buy anything Apple, you feel you belong to a higher class, even if you have to shell out more money. There is even a term for it. It's called the Apple tax. Apple can charge this tax because of its brand value. But in recent years, even brand Apple has taken a hit because at its core, Apple is no longer innovative. A few upgrades here and there do not change that. Apple is failing to bring anything new to the table in smartphones, apps, smart devices, or even their retail stores. In the world of technology, things can change at lightning speed. Apple now faces a challenge to remain a dominant player in the market. But for that, it needs to go beyond existing product lines, enter new territories, introduce an entirely new product category, one that nobody knew they could live without. Perhaps they can go back to their old tagline. For that, they need to think different. Adrian Mars is joining us live from London. He is a tech journalist, IT consultant, and a futurist. Welcome to the show, Adrian.
It's a pleasure. Good to be here.
Let me ask you, are we being harsh on Apple right now, or it's just the reality that they need to reinvent themselves? What do you think?
Well, as you've said, they are still the world's richest company, and they are doing very well. And they are, to an extent, reinventing themselves. We know they're working on an electric driverless car, and we may, at this upcoming launch event later this afternoon, see a tease of their what's expected to be very expensive virtual reality headset. And that may be an exciting, over the next maybe sort of 5-10 years or so, maybe a really exciting new market. It's going ahead at a pace and starting to become a really mass market thing. And I spend a lot of time in VR. I'm a big fan. Mm-hmm. So they are kind of inventing themselves. But, you know, that said, 3 in 10 smartphones were premium smartphones already. That's smartphones over $400, and 62% of those were Apple smartphones. So they're not doing too bad. It's been a rocky time, partly economically, which is knocking back sales. There's production problems and component problems, getting hold of components and around the world has been a problem. Apple is moving its production out of China because I think it's nervous of the geopolitics and moving it to India. So there are big challenges, and I think you're absolutely right. There is massively less of a reason to update your smartphone these days. They are just incremental updates, aside from the possibility of using it as a satellite sort of emergency beacon, which is very exciting. It would replace sort of roughly, £250 device you can apply separately and probably need a separate subscription if the rumours are true. But aside from that, everything else, as you say, is an incremental upgrade. And in the past, the phones were slower than you wanted them to be. Nowadays, you don't need a faster processor. The screens are fabulous. The batteries are, on the whole, not getting dramatically bigger every year, though we expect it to be a bit bigger. The changes are quite small. So, I hang on to my phones for the full 5 years, and then when the security updates run out, I buy a new one.
Adrian, let me ask you this. There has been a rivalry between the iOS operated system and Android operated system. Which one is better, do you think?
I don't think it's that simple. There's pros and cons. Apple is a bit better on the privacy security thing, but it's not dramatic. Their business model is a bit different, whereas, for instance, if you use Apple Pay to pay with your credit card using your phone, Apple charge the vendor for the credit card and merchant service companies for the service, whereas people like Samsung Pay and Android Pay, they use it to gather the data on you, to advertise at you. There's a different mindset. Android phones are a lot more flexible. They're less locked down. You can do more with them. Apps can talk to each other better. On the other hand, iPhones are a little bit more user-friendly. It's not a huge difference. They are certainly more expensive. They're lovely designs. Android phones, there's much more choice of phone, of course. There's hundreds of Android phones. There's very few Apple phones to choose from, as well as them being more expensive. My general advice to people is stick with what you're used to. It's a bit of a wrench moving. If you want to save money, then get a mid-range Android phone. You can't really do that with an Apple phone. Even their cheapest phones are very expensive. And consider buying last year's model. Particularly if it's a Samsung or an Apple or some Google phones, they offer the most years of updates. The important thing is that once you stop getting the updates, you stop getting the really vital security fixes. And although the phone carries on working, it becomes increasingly risky to use. So those are the companies that have a 5-year update period rather than 3 years. And considering you can get last year's phone for more than a third off, but you're only losing a fifth of the updates, it can be an excellent value to just buy last year's phone. One of the other problems, and to our benefit, is that it used to be that you could always tell which phone people had. There weren't so many phones. The new features were fairly obvious to look at, so that people could look at a phone and say, oh, you've got a prestige phone, it's got a curvy screen, it's one of the new Samsungs, or it's one of the new Apples, I recognise the camera layout. Nowadays, there's so many phones, it can even be difficult just at a glance to tell an Android or an Apple phone apart, especially different versions. So the prestige you get from having the very latest phone is also lost to some extent, especially when it's inside a case.
Do you think iPhone has lost relevance?
I don't think it's lost relevance. It's still a huge prestige phone. People still pay the Apple tax. They've still got the majority of the premium phone market. It hasn't been important which phone you buy for years. They're both great choices as long as it meets your spec. But it's not going to keep Apple. Apple do need to keep developing into new markets, just like any tech company needs to constantly innovate. And I think they will. They've got 2 interesting projects on the way, and who knows what else that we don't know about.
Okay. Adrian Mars, thank you very much for taking your time and talking to WION today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.